Hola a todos, bienvenidos a Blockchain Land. Ahora tendremos una conversación con Vays, uno de los más reconocidos analistas y traders de Bitcoin. Por eso pues tenemos aquí la playera de Bitcoin Trader, de Bitso. Y pues bueno, esta va a ser una conversación entre él y yo, va a ser en inglés. Y pues bueno, primero les quiero dar la bienvenida a Tone y nuevamente por acompañarnos. Él estuvo en el escenario principal el año pasado, que estuvimos en Jalisco Talent Land, y también estuvo el año antepasado, entonces pues ya nuevamente está con nosotros. Y bueno, first of all, thank you very much for being once again with us here at Jalisco Talent Land now at an home version. Tone, welcome.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me back. With the event, unfortunately, has to be online due to forces outside of our control. But good seeing you again, Jose, man. Always a pleasure.
Likewise, and thank you very much for being here and for all of our audience here. Well, as I told, Tom was with us last year during our main stage, and he was one of the few that predicted that this fall could happen. Many people were already thinking about going to the moon and our price going back to 20,000. And actually, people were really harsh on you with you on social networks. I even received messages telling me, "Hey, why are you gonna let Tom Vays again in the main stage?" And now, well, it happened, and now we see Bitcoin back, even going to the 5,000 level. So, Tone, how has things been? It's been a wild ride lately.
Yeah, it has, and I was getting a lot of bad, I guess, feedback coming back from social media, being a bear on the price of Bitcoin, expecting more downside, pretty much all throughout the last year, and it finally happened. It happened about a month ago, in the beginning to mid March. We had that big capitulation, as the term in the markets call it, where price of Bitcoin crashed down to $3,800. And pretty much since that day, I've become a Bitcoin bull. So this will be very, very different in that I now believe that Bitcoin has finally bottomed. I believe that the Bitcoin bear market has ended. I think the road to new all-time highs is going to be very, very challenging. But as far as trying to get your Bitcoin on the cheap, I think that day passed on March 2013 and 14th. And now it should be good from here, but it will still be challenging, and we'll see where it goes.
Yeah, I'm very positive too, because as you said, well, we reach a price in which is very attractive, and let's say we went back to 2-3 years ago in our pricing, and it was very attractive. But now we have something very different happening. So there are many reasons why people use Bitcoin. One of them is what's happening right now with all the bailouts and all the printing of money and all the government changes, etc. That's one of the reasons in which, for example, Bitcoin investors have in common with gold investors, that you cannot manipulate how much money you have. But there are also many other use cases and reasons to have Bitcoin. But on the other side, we will undoubtedly see the money markets, the investment markets, people, companies shrinking their budget, shrinking their treasury, and shrinking their investments. Although I'm also very bullish that this will help from one side what is happening for people to see why Bitcoin is a good long-term investment. This shrinking could also put a longer term for investments, and I think for Bitcoin too. How do you see this?
Yeah, there is a little bit of a dynamic in a market such as this, where a lot of companies are going to go out of business if they haven't already. A lot of people will be unemployed. You're seeing lots of governments around the world trying to just support people. In the US, they're just trying to hand out as much money as they can. given out loans that you may not really have to pay back to pay employees. So there is a lot of money being handed out to people for their survival, and I highly doubt that money is going to flow into Bitcoin. And just like with the market itself, people are going to tighten how they spend. I've been saying for a long time that one of the biggest beneficiaries of Bitcoin throughout its first 10 years has been this rise in the stock market. People are being a lot well off in 2017 than they were in, say, 2007, 10 years earlier. So all of that helped. Now with this downturn, Bitcoin has also suffered along with stock market and some other assets. But there are other things that are happening, and I think people will realize that Bitcoin is going to be a safe haven asset, because as they watch the price of Bitcoin rise, enough people will say, hey, if this event happens again, I would rather have Bitcoin because it was able to retain its value and held on to its value, even though there was that initial drop in speculative prices. The bigger issue is that this incident is allowing governments to go after physical money one more time. They're already saying that physical money is dangerous. There's coronavirus on them. We need to eliminate physical money. The U.S. Senate bill had the wording for government digital money in there, and all of this is trying to eliminate physical cash. The elimination of physical cash is very good for future Bitcoin adoption. And I mentioned it in my presentation last year on the main stage of Talent Land, that the elimination of cash, it'll be one of the big drivers that will drive people into Bitcoin. Also, while these events are being handled by the Federal Reserve in the United States, Europe is having a little bit of a struggle because of the dynamics between the different nations that are using the same currency. I believe this puts extra pressure on the European common currency. And if the European common currency falls apart, that is also very big for Bitcoin adoption, because a lot of the people in certain countries of Europe will be a lot more interested in something like Bitcoin instead of the politics and the currency that their own government is going to create. And there's a high probability that that currency will now be fully digital, not even have a cash component, because the government doesn't like cash. It creates a lot of problems for them. And this is where Bitcoin will play a major, major role.
Yeah, and I think what you say is really interesting, and also it helps in some countries, like you've seen in Latin American, African countries, in which is a highly cash economy. But on the other side, you have this surveillance and taxing side, no, which is the bad side about eliminating cash, eliminating the privacy. And for you, if you want to make any financial transaction or exchange, why does bank and government have to be watching everything that is going on? No, so it has good and bad things. And also something very interesting, as you said, is in the US and in many countries, governments are experimenting how to give out money. If it's, for example, in Mexico and Latin America through social programs, or in the US that they're trying to do this elevator money, handing out I think it's $1,200. And I think it's also an opportunity for Bitcoin blockchain and different companies and technologies to bringing this and have also a proposal, and not for this specific use case to be one of the main use cases, but also to show that it works. But also, as you said, to take the next step, and the next step is not only fiat currencies. We also have other types of money, and we also have stocks and other things that it will make this interaction, as you say, faster and better. But it will also have its challenges. For example, and we can go back to when we had other type of crisis or natural disasters like an earthquake or for example, a tsunami, or for example, any type that disconnects you. So in those cases, you cannot use any of these technologies. You have no light, you have no internet. Then there's a challenges, and it's also a big challenge that we still have for Bitcoin. And it's also something that I would like to speak with you. Bitcoin has been also evolving. It has also been changing, and of course, more people and companies have been coming in. And each time that we also see a bottom, we see that there are people that, no matter the price, will continue to build on top of these systems. How do you see this after this crisis, or during this crisis, all the opportunities and things that we could build on top of these systems to help?
No, I think this could benefit quite a bit. Anytime there is a massive shock to the economy, like we saw in 2007, 2008, a lot of people do look to become entrepreneurs, and they take the opportunity to invent something new. We had great innovation since those 2008 financial crisis. The smartphone came out around the same time, and there were others. So there could be great innovation coming out of it. And you are right. There are a lot of people that will continue to build on top of Bitcoin, no matter what it is. And even with these latest price drops and Bitcoin in this $6,000–7,000 area, there's still a lot of people that got in way earlier, and they are financially better off. And this gives them the opportunity to maybe hire some people at a cheaper price remotely. The beauty of Bitcoin is that if you are in the Bitcoin ecosystem, you have already committed to not having an office pretty much. You are already fully versed in the digital ecosystem. You don't need a place of residence. And there could be lots of opportunities here because a lot of good developers, a lot of smart people are potentially going to get laid off from their companies, and you can now hire them significantly cheaper than you otherwise would have to do. So I think there's lots of chances for opportunities. Also, I think technology is going to greatly improve. While today there are still pockets where internet is a problem. Hopefully in the near future, even after a tsunami or a hurricane, the satellites will provide you internet access, because it's just too important. You can't lose your internet access. And today, all you need is a smartphone, and you are fully connected to the world. So I can certainly see within the next 5 years, Bitcoin working everywhere, anywhere, having much better internet connectivity. I think it will be great.
Yeah, and this is the first financial crisis that Bitcoin actually goes through. The first financial crisis, 2007, 2008. It was still planning. 2009, it launched. So it was still a very young system. So it's the first actual one. And some data that are amazing that I took last week is, for example, NASDAQ. It touched levels that it first touched in 2 years, 2 months after its all-time highs. SPY, which tracks the S&P 500, 3 years, 9 months. And the most dramatic one was Dow Jones, DIA, the ETF, 5 years. So there's people that have been investing, for example, in stock markets. Of course, most of them do not invest in all-time high like they do in Bitcoin. That doesn't happen. People don't buy when it's high and sell when it's low. But this is the first time that we've seen a Bitcoin and it's holding. Let's say it's 0% year to date, and in 1 year 30 to 50%, depends on how. There's a lot of volatility. I don't see any change in the markets of trend, but what I do see is, like you said, that more people will come into this economy. More people will know about Bitcoin and other options, of course, gold. We see right now a shortage of physical gold with people that have it. We will see that in next years for Bitcoin. But also, you've been traveling a lot in various countries. Like you've seen how financial system works. You've seen how all the limitations and many things that happen. You've been in Mexico, you've been in Latin America, you've been in Africa. So what do you see besides here? Let's see on usability, on integration of systems for Bitcoin, and how would this help in a next financial crisis? Like, for example, having always in your portfolio, I would say, gold and Bitcoin.
Well, it's actually interesting that you just said that, because I was in Africa and I came back to the U.S. Just as about 3 weeks ago, just as the coronavirus struggles got really, really bad. And I had a lot of trouble using the financial system in South Africa, because the American Express card, which is my go-to credit card, wasn't very popular there, probably because due to its high fees. And when I'm in other countries, when I'm in Latin American countries, also especially when I'm in Eastern European countries, there is a currency exchange in every corner. I can go anywhere with my US $100 bills and I can just get local currency. I had a huge struggle doing that in South Africa. I was in the capital city at one point, and I went to 3 banks, and none of them would exchange my US dollars for the local currency because of crazy controls. I did eventually find a bank that would do it, but they demanded my passport, which I wasn't carrying with me at the time. So I ran into that struggle. So what actually helped me around South Africa was Bitcoin, but not Bitcoin directly. I happen to have a Bitcoin debit card where it's not the best way to use Bitcoin, because I personally like to only use Bitcoin when the person on the other end will appreciate the Bitcoin that I'm using to buy his product or service. But in this case, all over South Africa, I was using my Bitcoin debit card where I send in Bitcoin. I pretty much sell it, or I keep it in Bitcoin on the card, and it converts to the local currency as I swipe the card with the merchants. And and that one was working in every single store or restaurant I was going to. And that's another awesome backup plan where, hey, you can preload Bitcoin, and you're now not dependent on the economy locally in case their system goes down and you can't access your money at the bank. But hey, here's a card that is completely independent. It's out of other jurisdictions, and you can send Bitcoin to it anytime. And within 10 minutes, you can go ahead and spend the prepaid balance on that card. So that really worked for me. The company I'm using for it is called Embly, but they're one of the but there's they're starting to pop up, and they're very, very useful.
I've also heard what you have said about other people that travel a lot. It's that it's so difficult sometimes to get cash in some countries that they do what you say. They use their debit card and they withdraw from ATMs. Although it's a high fee, yeah, it's expensive. That the process and the bureaucracy to get it, as you said, is so large, and sometimes you can't.
Right.
That
and I can't do the same thing. I can do the same thing with a debit card like this. I just don't like to pay those high fees. But if I had to, I could. It also works like that. So it just gives you another backup plan. And then you realize, wow, if Bitcoin is this useful through a debit card, why don't more merchants just accept it directly? And I think eventually they will. Eventually, most merchants will just accept Bitcoin directly the way they accept credit cards. And then they're going to try to pay their employees in Bitcoin, and the circle, the Bitcoin circular economy will finally get to close. And I think that's where we're heading to one day. It might take another 3 to 5 years to get there. But when we come out of this economic recession, hopefully global economic recession, that hopefully won't turn into a depression. And if Bitcoin is coming out of this stronger than it went in, if the price of Bitcoin is breaking $10,000 by end of the year, people will have a lot more confidence in Bitcoin, especially if Bitcoin is pushing new all-time highs before the stock market goes to new all-time highs. I was asked that question earlier today, and I'm not sure what's going to go to new all-time highs first, Bitcoin or the stock market. I believe they both will, and I do think Bitcoin will beat it. I think this economic turn to the downside will be severe for many, many companies. And I think the struggle for the S&P 500 to get back to new all-time highs will be more challenging than for Bitcoin or even gold. Gold is almost at its new all-time highs. And what happens when a market reaches new all-time highs after a multi-year struggle? It ends up all over the news, all over social media, and it just drives more and more people into that market.
Yeah, definitely. And once again, I think there are many strategies to investing. One of the mostly used, for example, is the dollar cost average. For example, that's what you use in your pension fund, etc. There are many ways. It's not just putting your whole bag of money and throwing it at something and expecting it to be risk-free and to make you more money. And also something very interesting that you say, I also agree that I think US economy is being choked, but undoubtedly it will come out and in some years, again, do some all-time highs in the stock market. It had one of the biggest economic growth periods. I think it was the biggest economic growth period in the US history right now until this happened. But the story is going to be very different, unfortunately, in Latam, in Europe, in Asia, in which we weren't in all-time highs, and we will see all this more sense having also Bitcoin, gold, and other. For example, right now this also has devalued our different currencies against Bitcoin. And going back into the future, and this is our closing comments. In 10 years, probably we're going to be in our next financial crisis. We're going to be having, I believe Bitcoin is still going to be around. Most of the altcoins are not going to be around. Some of them will be, other systems will prevail. But do you think we will reach also back the $1 trillion market cap? We have never gotten there. The nearest we were was during the 2017-2018 crypto and ICO bubble. And I think that going there, it would make Bitcoin and crypto one of the biggest economies in the world. I mean, US and China are the biggest economies, but most of the world economies do not surpass $1 trillion. So where do you see that? You said that you expect this already to be the bottom. Probably we won't go back to 5,000. We could be reaching all-time highs, but where do you see it in the future? And when do you see, for example, this 1 trillion market cap?
Oh, I certainly see, I do foresee a $1 trillion market cap in Bitcoin probably within the next 5 years. I think we can get there probably around the time or soon after the next halving, which is coming up here. For those that are new to the Bitcoin ecosystem, every 4 years, the amount of new Bitcoin being created every 10 minutes gets cut in half. And we're about to have that event just about a month from now. It's coming. And usually soon after that event, the price of Bitcoin tends to rise because there's a lot less selling pressure from new Bitcoin being created into the marketplace or being added into the marketplace. And 4 years from now, it will happen again. So probably around that time, probably within the next 5 years, 6 max, I think we will be pushing that $6 trillion market cap. And I really do like what you said about dollar cost average. It really is the best way to kind of do it. You pick an amount of money that is not critical to your lifestyle, something like maybe 3 to 5% of your paycheck, maybe even 1 to 3% of your paycheck. And you just convert that into Bitcoin either every week or every month, or some people do it every day. And I know a person that does it every day, and he said he would do it by the hour for the rest of his life if the technology was there for him to do it easily without fees. And if you look back, it really has outperformed almost anyone that decided to pick that one time to get in. Dollar cost average is a really good strategy. Unless you are an experienced trader or have experience investing in assets, preferably prior to getting involved in Bitcoin, I say try not to become a trader and try to dollar cost average instead, and you'll be very happy over the next 5 years.
Yeah, that's right. And what you say, people a lot ask me, when should I buy? always that you can, always that you have an income. You should put something by the side, like you said, and always do an investment or save that money.
Yeah.
I want to thank you very much.
Jose, on that note, when people ask me when is the best time to buy Bitcoin, my answer is always the same. If you are willing to hold it for 5 to 10 years, the best time to buy it was yesterday. It was always yesterday.
And also what you said about starting with a Bitcoin, I tell people, like, any kind of investment, if you're really into an investment in the long run, if you're for the S&P, if you're for the NASDAQ, if you're for gold, for Bitcoin, right now is a great time to start hoarding those positions, because there are the positions that, as you said, you want in 3, 5, 10 years, and you trust are going to be here. So once again, I want to thank you very much, Tom, for being part of Jalisco Talent Land at Home, and also Blockchain Land. And thank you to all of the people that make this possible, and to all the team and everyone watching. We hope to see you in our next event, which we have right now planned for the 29th of July to the 29th of June to the 3rd of July, if everything goes right. Thank you very much once again, Tone. Anyone that wishes to see more about Tone, he has his own page at tonevays.com, and he always places some good content about Bitcoin trading in his YouTube channel. Thank you very much, Tone. See you next time.
Thank you. Thank you, Talent Land.